I've come here to the Dueling Oaks in City Park, New Orleans, to talk to you about Bernard de Marigny, a colorful and influential figure in our history. He was a plantation owner, as was his father, and he was a bit of a wild child growing up. In fact, his father sent him to England as a punishment for womanizing, drinking, and gambling, when Bernard was 13 years old. It was a different time. It was a different time. As you can imagine, though, 2 years in England without parental supervision did not exactly cool the fever in his blood, and he arrived back at age 15 wilder than ever. And his father then had the good sense to die. And perhaps in a moment of weakness, the old man left him everything, all the money and all the land. So much so that Bernard became the richest teenager in the world at the time when the will was executed. But as you can imagine, if you're 15 and your parents are dead and you have disposable income, you don't exactly spend that money wisely. And Bernard lost most of his fortune due to gambling debts. So he decided to embark on an ambitious project to make back his money. Basically, his scheme was to sell off his plantation bit by bit to developers to become what would be the first official suburb of the city of New Orleans, the Faubourg Marigny. These days, we just kind of call it the Marigny neighborhood or simply the Marigny. It's just downriver from the French Quarter. He had one condition, though. He wanted to name all the streets that would go on his old land. He named Desire Street, as in a streetcar named Desire.
Hey, Stella!
He named Piety Street, which is right next to Desire Street. He thought that'd be funny. Ha ha, 19th century humor. Now, he did make a fortune back from this. He did it. It took him years, but he finally made his money back, which he then lost yet again. Though not due to gambling debts, mostly just due to bad luck. He lost a lot of money in a financial crash in 1837, and he invested a whole bunch of money into political candidates that just went nowhere. He ran for governor 3 times himself and lost every single time. And he died a significantly poorer man than he had been when he was young. He lived to a ripe old age, that much is true, but at the time of his death, he was living in a 2-room apartment on his old land. So the richest teenager in the world died perhaps the poorest aristocrat in New Orleans. One of his street names did not survive to the modern day. I'm referring, of course, to Craps Street, which he named after his favorite game. And tradition has it, actually, that he named the game craps. And he learned it in England, where it was called hazards, introduced it to New Orleans high society, and renamed it crapeau. Apparently, crapeau, by the way, is a Creole French word. Apparently, it was because of the position that he took as he threw the dice, which was something like this. And crapeau, of course, is Creole French meaning a frog or a toad. So that's a very frog-like stance. Craps Street did not survive because in the 1850s, the churches on Craps Street got together and decided that they did not want to be known as the crappy churches on Craps Street. It's a real pity, in my opinion. Would have been great for tourism. Now, Bernard was also an extremely accomplished duelist. He fought more than a dozen duels in his lifetime, many of which happened right here, beneath the Dueling Oaks. He fought with all sorts of weapons, rapiers, pistols, as one does, your footwork is impeccable, we've all seen the movies. And his penchant for dueling led to one pretty funny episode in his life. He was the president of the state senate at the time. This was after 1812 when Louisiana had become a state. And a motion was being proposed by some American politicians in the state senate to change the official legal language of Louisiana from French to English. And Bernard, of course, being a good Creole, he vehemently opposed this motion. And an American politician by the name of Humble, in the course of one particularly heated debate, called Bernard an idiot. So Bernard immediately challenged him to a duel. Now, Mr. Humble, he was like, I'm not going to fight this guy. That's so stupid. I think he's a moron, sure, but I don't want him dead. And some of his American colleagues who had been in Louisiana for a bit longer said, no, dude, you have to fight him. These Creoles, they're crazy. If you don't fight him, they'll think you're a coward and you won't be able to get anything done politically. And so Mr. Humble said, okay, oh God, all right. So he decided to stack the circumstances of the duel in his favor. Apparently, this Humble was a pretty big guy. I read one source that described him as being 7 feet tall.
William Wallace is 7 feet tall.
Yes, I've heard.
Almost certainly an exaggeration, but he was a pretty big guy for his day. And Bernard was a fairly diminutive fellow. Now, Mr. Humble, being the challenged party, could then choose the time, the place, and the weapons used for the duel. So he said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to fight at the 5-foot watermark of Lake Pontchartrain with sledgehammers. At that point, Bernard, perhaps wisely, retracted his challenge for a duel. And later, apparently, the two became great friends. So, go figure. It is sort of a pity that they didn't fight, however. I mean, in the Showtime original miniseries about that period of New Orleans history, he will fight that dude with a sledgehammer. You know, be like, Mr. Humber, do you yield? And he'll go, I'd rather die. And Bernard will go, very well, monsieur. You know, be like a David and Goliath type of thing. Be awesome.